Welcome to the Martin Bailey Photography Podcast. It's July 25, 2023, and this is episode 818. You may remember that at the end of 2022, I decided to dump my Drobo drives due to the problems I was having with them and a lack of confidence in Drobo as a company in light of their many bankruptcy reports and half-baked takeover attempts. The technical problem caused me to reformat my main Drobo, but as I have always ironically kept a backup of my Drobo to a second Drobo, I could restore all of my data. Before I started this process, I paused my Backblaze cloud backup because I didn't want it to see my Drobo with no data and remove files from my cloud backup. I thought that would work until I returned to my computer the following morning with still lots of data to restore and found that Backblaze had unpaused itself and deleted almost 20 terabytes of data from my cloud backup. This amount of data takes years to accumulate, and although there may have been a way to have them restore my data from a backup, I decided that I would look for an alternative cloud backup at the same time as trying to figure out my new local storage strategy. I decided to buy a Synology NAS, or Network Attached Storage Drive, which is more a server than just a hard drive. And I also bought a 10 gigabits per second switching hub so that the information on my wired LAN between my iMac and my Synology drive would be as fast as possible, and importantly, faster than my Drobo drives over Thunderbolt. My Wi-Fi network speeds limit what I can do from my MacBook Pro, but I can access the NAS over the network, which is a big benefit over the Drobo, which had to be plugged in to one machine. Of course, I could access files on the Drobo via my iMac if it was turned on, but the transfer speeds were pretty poor compared to my Synology and my current network. For my cloud storage, after a false start when I was told that they did not have a plan with enough storage space for my requirements, I ended up working with a company called iDrive, who released a 50 terabyte plan shortly after we spoke, and they had point blank refused to create one. This was annoying, but iDrive was realistically my only option, both from the data volume perspective and because they have a service that they call Express Backup, which enables users to request a hard drive and copy their backup data to the drive and post it back to iDrive so that they can then add it to your storage space, and you can then continue to incrementally back up your data. I requested a 20 terabyte drive, which would have been enough to fit all of my important data, and I had to pay the postage. It's free if you live in the US. The drive arrived and was just 18 terabytes, not my requested 20 terabytes, so I had to ration my initial backup. I sent the disk back to them with my data, and it took them over a week after the disk arrived to start to restore the data to my space. After a few days, the restore job froze, and they told me to wait because it takes a long time. Then a week later, they emailed me to tell me that the job had froze, but they had restarted it. All in all, Express Backup took around 6 weeks. Once the offline data transfer was finished, I followed their instructions to start my backup, which was supposed to be incremental, just adding new files. But the validation of my data was and still is painfully slow, and for more than 4 months it froze every few days. I would then have to restart the iDrive service on my Synology box and start the backup again, But when I do that, it starts from the beginning again. I eventually removed a large chunk of the data that I wanted to back up so that the transfer would get to my new photos from this year, which were not yet backed up in the cloud. Since I reduced the size of my initial network-based backup, it ran for a few weeks, and the file name is changing, so the process isn't stuck. When I started to write this post almost a week ago, I saw that some of the videos and images from my recent Namibia trips were being backed up. The backup status still said that it has completed the transfer of 46% of my data, which equates to 9.61 terabytes of 20.77 terabytes. And there is a message that says there are 150 days for the backup to run. This has never said anything else, and it's been running on and off for around 5 months now, so it isn't much of a reference. I'm coming up to my 8th month of using iDrive, and I have 46% of my data confirmed as being backed up, despite most of the remaining data being stored on my remote storage already. I doubt that this initial network backup will finish by the end of the year, and I believe there is still a chance that it may never finish, as I will continue to add batches of images regularly. Another issue I'm almost expecting to see but could not get a comment from the iDrive support team is whether or not subsequent backups after this one has been completed will also check every single file in the same way that it is now. If it does, the system is useless for large volumes of data. That would make their plans and the express backup options almost a scam, and their software is so poorly designed that I'm honestly thinking I cannot recommend iDrive as a realistic cloud backup system for anyone with more than a few terabytes of data to store. If, like me, you need a way to transfer your initial backup on physical drives, you may have no option but to try iDrive, as I did. If that is the case, I wish you better luck than I've had. Let me know how your experience goes if you try them. Also, if anyone either now or in the future finds a better alternative, please let me know. I have considered AWS and Synology C2, but cannot do my initial data transfer offline. I also considered sending a physical hard drive backup of my data to an off-site warehouse, but that would be cumbersome, time-consuming, stressful, and expensive. That almost sounds like iDrive, except they're not really overly expensive. I almost wish they charged more if they are short of funds to develop a better system, because what they have right now just doesn't cut it. One thing that I feel is only fair to include here is that I am affected by Japan's stagnant IT infrastructure. When I moved to my current apartment 13 years ago, my broadband network was fast. I would tell people that I had a 320 megabits per second network connection and was the envy of the airwaves. Then 13 years passed and nothing has changed. The rest of the world's network speeds have since incrementally increased, but despite storming ahead on technology for several decades, Japan seemed to nosedive, burying its head in the sand in most technology sectors, and the Japanese people's general dislike of price increases leaves companies with little funds to innovate. My provider, JCOM, also caps my daily upload quota. If I leave my Synology running without any limits in place, after a few days I receive a snotty registered mail letter that we have to sign for, telling me that I'm uploading more than 30 gigabytes of data per day, which is, in their words, an unfathomably large amount of data. And if I don't stop, they will choke my bandwidth to a baud rate similar to what we used to get over a dial-up modem connection in the mid-90s. Seriously, I wasn't able to limit my upload speeds enough earlier this year when they sent one of these letters, and I was limited to a laughable bandwidth for a whole month as a penance for the unfathomably large amount of data I'd been uploading. Luckily, I have a 5G wireless network router that I can switch to for all other data transfers, so the penance wasn't so hard to bear. But my Synology NAS has to remain on my wired network because JCOM allows me to remap ports, and the 5G router does not. So at least JCOM got one thing right. So they do not understand modern day data transfer needs. I have enough speed to upload my data in around half the time, but I have to choke it according to their limitations, and I'm not doing anything unfathomable. Anyway, this is not helping, and it's not any fault of iDrive, so I will cut them some slack on that front. But I don't think this is behind the software freezing or the poor design of their validation algorithms. Before we wrap this up, I have an update. 6 days ago, after I wrote down my thoughts to this point, I noticed an essential update for the Synology NAS, which I applied, and to complete the process I had to reboot the system. The reboot caused the iDrive backup to stop, and when I restarted it, unsurprisingly, my backup progress had returned to 0. 1 day later, it was back to 7%, and a further 4 days after that, my backup had advanced to 9%. And it was still checking images that were included in my Express backup. So nothing new had been uploaded yet. Again though, credit where credit's due. The process did jump back up to 46% later on the 5th day, and new images started to get backed up again. As of today, it's jumped to 47%. So, in the title of this post, I posed the question, is iDrive any good for large volume cloud backups? And my short answer at this point is no. I will continue to monitor my backup, and if it surprises me by finishing sooner and completing future incremental backups much more efficiently, I'll let you know, and I'll add a note to this post. If you find this post in the future and don't see a message with positive news, I cannot recommend iDrive if you have more than a few terabytes of data to store. I can't say that I regret starting to work with iDrive, as they are my only option as of July 2023. However, if you want a smooth backup process for a Synology NAS with a lot of data, please tread carefully. Thanks very much for listening today. If you enjoy this podcast, please consider supporting us on Patreon, which comes with various benefits depending on your contribution, from basic support and access to the MBP community to full-blown photography mentorships. For further details, check out our Patreon page at mbp.ac/Patreon. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Threads. Links to everything that I'm up to are at martinbaileyphotography.com, so do drop by and take a look. I'll be back next week with another episode, but in the meantime, you take care and have a great week, whatever you're doing. Bye-bye.